Imagine holding a technology in your hands that could effectively reset the global economy, erase borders, and make resource scarcity a relic of the Dark Ages. You are its creator. But instead of revealing this triumph to the world, you take a sledgehammer and methodically reduce your prototype to a pile of scrap metal. We've been conditioned to believe that progress is an unstoppable force, a tide that always moves forward. We are told that if an idea is viable and profitable, it will inevitably conquer the market. But the history of technical thought isn't a straight line. It's a graveyard. And the most fascinating exhibits there aren't the failures or the dead ends, but the technologies that were too perfect for their time. So perfect, in fact, that their own fathers had to become their executioners. There is a cozy myth that if something revolutionary disappears, it's because of greedy corporations, oil lobbies, or secret services. It's easier to believe in a conspiracy of villains than to accept that a genius might actually be terrified of their own creation. But let's look deeper. What if the greatest enemy of innovation isn't a capitalist, but the realization that the world simply wouldn't survive a collision with a future it isn't ready for? We assume an inventor always craves fame and change. Yet history reveals moments where the fear of chaos was far stronger than the thirst for recognition. Take a classic example from the archives of the Industrial Age. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a time when it seemed man was about to become a god. Electricity, radio, the first steps into quantum physics. In this atmosphere, projects were born that today seem like magic. Scientists found ways to transmit energy wirelessly, created materials with impossible properties, and developed algorithms that could have automated labor decades before the first computer. Logic suggests such technology should have made its creator a billionaire. But therein lies the first paradox. In a world built on the sale of scarcity, a technology that creates abundance isn't a salvation, it's a virus. It destroys the very structure of value. An inventor standing at the source of such power quickly realizes that their child won't just improve life. It will rip the foundation out from under civilization. If energy becomes free, empires crumble. If a material becomes eternal, manufacturing stops. If a machine replaces everyone, society drowns in its own uselessness. At that moment, pure scientific ecstasy is replaced by an icy dread. Often the destruction of a technology isn't forced from the outside, it's a bitter calculation. We've heard stories of water-powered engines, of ultra-strong glass that wouldn't break under a hammer, of cures supposedly too effective to be released. Usually these are dismissed as urban legends, but look at the real cases where authors deliberately slowed down history. Consider Nikola Tesla and his Wardenclyffe project. The popular version is that J.P. Morgan pulled the plug when he realized he couldn't put a meter on free energy. But there's another side. Tesla himself, in his later writings, often mused that humanity was a naughty child that shouldn't be handed matches of such magnitude. He realized his resonance system could light up the planet, but it could also split it apart if it fell into the hands of those who think only of war. This is the conflict between I can and I should. And here, the stakes reach the heavens. When a scientist realizes their discovery is 2 centuries ahead of society's ethics, they find themselves in the position of a bomb disposal expert. To let the technology live is to trigger a global collapse. We tend to idealize progress, but any sudden leap is a catastrophe for the millions whose lives are tied to the old gears. This is where the painful pivot happens. The creator becomes a censor. They realize the world is a fragile ecosystem held together by certain imperfections. Remove those imperfections too quickly, and the system shatters. But why not just hide the blueprints in a safe for better times? Why the total destruction? Because a technology isn't just paper, it's a mindset. Once born in one head, an idea begins to vibrate in the collective consciousness.
Creators smashed prototypes and burned calculations not because they were insane, but because they knew that as long as one tangible example existed, the temptation to use it would be too great. They weren't afraid the technology wouldn't work. They were afraid it would work perfectly. Imagine for a moment a chemist in the 1930s who accidentally synthesized a material that was cheap and absolutely resistant to decay. Today we call that the plastic crisis. Back then, it would have been a miracle. But if he had the foresight to see oceans choked with waste for centuries to come, wouldn't it have been the highest act of humanity to burn that formula before the first factory ever opened?
Sometimes destruction isn't cowardice or defeat. It's a form of responsibility unavailable to a society obsessed with instant consumption. As we reach the heart of the matter, we find a crucial node of meaning. We usually blame the system for suppressing innovation. But what if the system is us? Our habits, our economy, our inability to handle change. The inventor who smashes his own device is actually passing judgment not on his own intellect, but on our immaturity. He sees that we would handle his gift like barbarians finding a machine gun. First we'd be amazed, then we'd kill each other. The most frightening part of these stories is the silence that follows. We will never know the exact number of discoveries buried in basements and garages by their own authors. We only see the tip of the iceberg, the cases where rumors leaked into newspapers or memoirs. But logic dictates there have been thousands of such episodes. Every time humanity approached a line labeled "too soon," an internal fuse blew. It's a kind of immune system for civilization, where the antibodies are the very people who carry the breakthrough ideas. Now, we approach the climax. What is the true reason these technologies were intentionally erased? The answer is paradoxical. They were destroyed to save the very process of creation. If you give humanity everything at once, you rob it of the need to evolve. Progress isn't a destination. It's a path of overcoming. A technology that solves all problems in one stroke is the death of spiritual evolution. It turns a human into a domestic animal surrounded by magical gadgets they don't understand. The creators with truly massive vision understood this. The world must earn its discoveries through mistakes, through sweat, and through a gradual realization of responsibility. The real resolution to the mystery of buried technologies is that they haven't actually gone anywhere. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, and the same applies to ideas. They simply return to the informational field, waiting for the moment when the collective mind grows to the required level. Those who smashed their machines 100 years ago weren't committing an act of vandalism. They were performing an act of mercy. They gave us time. Time to grow up before we wielded tools capable of either launching us to the stars or turning the planet into a scorched wasteland. The paradox of technical progress is that its true heroes are not only those who created something, but also those who had the strength to stop in time. We live in an era that prides itself on the speed of change. We chase every new gadget and every AI breakthrough without a second thought for the consequences. And perhaps today, more than ever, we lack those very people capable of saying, "This is too good to be true, and it is too dangerous to be here now." The history of destroyed technologies teaches us a harsh but vital truth. The right to own the future isn't automatically granted with an invention's patent. That right is bought by a society's ability not to drown in its own possibilities. So, if you ever hear of a brilliant discovery that suddenly vanished along with its author, don't rush to blame the shadowy figures in high offices. Perhaps, in the silence of a laboratory, one person simply looked the future in the eyes and decided we weren't ready to meet it yet. In that gesture,
There was far more love for humanity than in every product launch we see today. Sometimes, the greatest thing a creator can leave behind is a void, one that we must fill ourselves with our own wisdom, our own ethics, and our own slow, deliberate work.